Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, Fritz Michel. Fritz, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Mike.
I'll tell you what, you are an interesting guy. For having read your background. So you go to Yale, you get a degree in history, and you wind up in the entertainment business, not just as a musician, but as an actor, director, producer, dramatist, musician, a songwriter.
Yeah.
Did I leave anything out?
I've written some stuff too. I wrote for Crank Yankers, a comedy show with puppets, deviant puppets, right around the early 2000s. But and a couple scripts, option books. I've done a lot of stuff in showbiz. Yeah,
that's very cool. Well, tell me this: how does your journey go from Yale to Crank Yankers to musician and everything in between?
Well, I guess I would tell you that I've always had a pretty active imagination, and I think that's sort of the benefits of studying history. History is just such a great subject, and that we learn. I'm glad I studied it, because I think that gives you the ability to approach and analyze and take on all the crazy paths that life is going to throw at you, and put them in some context and be able to make somewhat interesting choices along the way, because you're informed by what's come before you. So that's how my history degree launched me into the world. I'll tell you that. And I had always been interested in being an actor. My first job was actually as a journalist for the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is a large not-for-profit environmental group in the early 90s. And I was writing their magazine, putting together their magazine, and I was also interested in that, and I always had this. I've always been drawn to whether it's writing, music, stage, film, something that has a final product that you're looking to connect with an audience. And I think that's where we artists find our people, and that's been my journey with that through all these different mediums.
Absolutely. Well, from Yale is what you end up on Broadway not too long after, correct?
Yeah.
Or was that a while?
Let's say that was that took a few years, I think. I'm trying to think. I got out of college. Yes. Well, I did the job at NRDC. The Broadway thing came about. I got back to New York, and I was working commercial real estate, and I was thinking to myself, I had been a good actor in college. I really should give this a go. I'm really dying to see if I can make this happen. I'm taking acting classes at night down at Sub Studio on 6th Avenue, and fortunately, things turned well for me. As I started taking those classes, I was able to get an agent very, very quickly, and she had this one of those. It's like Broadway Danny Rose, the Woody Allen movie?
Yeah.
She was sitting there smoking her cigarette, headshots on the wall above the office. Hi, Fritz, come in. How are you? You did a good monologue. I'm glad to see that. I think I could probably use your type. You kind of seem interesting. And she was my agent for all the years that I was in New York. I mean, we parted ways when I was in Los Angeles, but she was a really great Broadway lady. And I got to be part of this production with Charles Durning and George C. Scott of Inherit the Wind. Granted, I was in the jury box. It's a trial, but it was really exciting, and that was part of my New York theater experience that I came up in the 90s with, and it was really cool. I mean, I worked with some great productions, great people, great. I toured the country doing Syriana de Bergerac. I did all kinds of regional theater. I did Death Trap. I did The Foreigner, a whole bunch of different plays. As a working actor before deciding to go out west and try my hand at the movies.
Yeah. Well, tell me this, Fritz, that, first night on Broadway in Inherit the Wind, what was going through your mind when you're trying to take everything in?
You've been in those theaters so long. my friends and my family were there, and it's just one of those things. If you've dreamed of being an actor and you actually find yourself, it's almost surreal that you're staying there. You got to pinch yourself and say, "Oh my God, wow, this is actually I'm on Broadway, and I'm listening to George C. Scott give his testimony," and it was really, it was really great. You see the house, the people, and you say, "Wow, this is pretty cool." It's a tradition that's been there a lot before me. It's going to be there after me, and you're just thrilled to be part of it if you've aspired to that.
Tell me this, from your time on that show, what did you take from it that you used in your acting career from that point forward?
Well, I guess from that show, God, that was, again, I was in the jury box listening. It was not a major role, but I guess, like everything you do, take yourself seriously, because anytime you end up in any professional situation as an artist, it doesn't matter if you're playing one note. I think it applies to so many different things in life, always, there's no small parts, only small, and so take what you do and make the best of it. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you mentioned leaving New York, going to LA. Where did the journey in LA take you?
The journey in LA was kind of interesting. We moved out there. I'm a longtime New Yorker. My roots here are pretty deep. And I had always thought that if I could get an opportunity working out in Los Angeles and could land an agent out there, I would go out there and try to see how it would go in Hollywood. And as it happened, I got an offer to start a role on September 10th, 2001 at the Malibu Playhouse in Malibu. And my wife at the time we'd been in San Francisco for the weekend. She flew back to New York on September 10th. I drove down to Los Angeles, moved into my sublab in Studio City. The phone rings on the morning of September 11th. And my wife is in our apartment in downtown New York. We lived about 8 blocks from the World Trade Center. Said, "Hey, it's not an optical illusion this time, because it used to be able to see the planes fly between the towers, and you didn't really think that they were it was like an optical illusion. You didn't think that they would impact." And I said, "Are you sure it's not an optical illusion? It's 8:45, it's 5:45 in Studio City." She goes, "No, the plane just flew into the building, and something's going on." And that was a pretty harrowing experience for her, especially. And then for me, being so far from home, I remember going down to Ventura Boulevard and being like, "Where am I? My city is collapsing, and my people are there, yet here I am in California." It was a very dislocated time for us. And ultimately that drove our move, I think, out west, because I was doing the play. I did land an agent, and we said, why not give it a go out here? So that was something else. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, it's a helpless feeling when there's nothing that you can do.
That's right.
To help.
Yeah, it was just all on TV, and I remember she was, go down in the basement. I was on the phone with her when the second building hit, and she's like, "Oh, I think there's another explosion," because we were about 8 blocks north of the towers, and our bedroom looked directly at the Twin Towers, and they spent a group of friends of ours all spent the night on the roof of a friend's apartment. Everyone who lived in the neighborhood got gathered as the events of the day unfolded and kind of slept in one apartment, probably 25 of them, trying to process what was going on. And then the area below Canal Street was eventually cleared out. Basically, I guess you could stay. There was very limited access for a while there, and it took a long time even for the fires to get out. I came back as soon as I could. I came back for a weekend. I remember in early October flying back across the country once airspace had been opened again. And I remember flying into New York, and you could still see the orange from the fires from the two towers. They were still burning. Crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'll tell you that your venture to California, though, turned out to be pretty fruitful for you, because you ended up doing movies and TV and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Well, that definitely jump-started a really amazing chapter in our life. And, I think I was, chasing the California dream as many are wont to do. And I worked with some incredible people. I worked with, Ron Howard and Steve Gagin, and I worked on some really great shows, ER and Alias, and all of the stuff. I kind of had a niche playing French people because I could talk like this, and je parle français, alors c'est facile pour moi to go back and forth between the two. So that was the way I did things out there, and but it was really fun to see all of these. Now that we're talking about music, putting on a TV show is not unlike being in a band. There's lots of different elements that go into it. Seeing a TV set at work is one of the most exciting things. Just the camera truck, the costume truck, the makeup truck, the grips, the electric, the camera package, and whatever they're setting up. It's one of the most fascinating jobs to be part of on a weekly basis because it's shot very fast-paced. Episodic TV, they shoot one episode a week, goes into editing, like it's pre-production for a week where they cast, and then they get the actors in, you costume, they come in, you shoot your scenes for the week, and then they shoot all the scenes, goes to the editor, and then it's on TV the next 2 weeks after that. So it's a kind of fun to watch that machine at work. You go through the gates of the lot and off to the medical room, and I guess it was in Kenya where like in ER, for example, the sets are always amazing when you're in Hollywood. It's amazing to see what they do.
It always amazes me how much gets done in such a short period of time in TV production.
Yes. It's very fast. It's very fast. I remember one morning, my first morning on the set, I was like, oh, I'm in my trailer. This is really great. I remember someone knocking. Are you ready to come? It's 7:15 a.m. Are you ready for makeup? I was like, I just sat down. I thought you were supposed to be hanging out in your trailer all day. But it wasn't that way at all.
I need my time.
Yeah, exactly. For me, then it's funny because you're I don't have that much experience. I'm a young guy. I don't have that much experience. You're eyeball to eyeball with the star of the show who's been doing this for 5 years, and you're coming in to do a few. I was playing a Doctors Without Borders guy in that episode, and I can remember. I had a bunch of lines and medical things to do, and of course, Noah Wiley's been shooting this thing. It's his 8th episode of the season. He's probably been in production for the last 8 weeks, steady, new crew of people coming. And then, meanwhile, I've landed this gig. I show up. I'm trying to remember. You got the CTE. He's not improving. And, we get 1 or 2 takes, and then you just hope it's good enough. The directors look at it, and on we go. But, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Just like playing live music, though, same thing.
Well, tell me this. Were you working on your music, doing music while you were doing your acting in LA?
Well, yeah. I played guitar since I was I probably wanted to be a musician since long before I started taking music seriously, and I performed in musicals as well. I'd done a spoof of Fiddler on the Roof set in a modern day suburb of Montreal at La Mama on East 4th Street in the East Village, in the late 90s at some point. And I was always a music fan. I loved going to concerts and doing things like that. And I always played the guitar. So yes, I was always puttering around with songwriting and making songs as I was doing this. I just didn't really have the chops at that point to think, oh, I'm gonna go shift myself into music, because I was finding work and finding my way through that process of
right.
Directing films, acting in films, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, tell me this, Fritz. Were you always a music aficionado, collecting records? Always, what was the first record you remember getting?
Oh gosh, I love talking about records. The first record I remember getting. Well, I think we came back. Well, I can remember listening to my mom's greatest hits of Jeu Dassin, who was a very popular French singer when I was a child. He was a Hollywood guy. His father was the director Jules Dassin. His mother was an actress named Sylvie Vartan. Jules Dassin and an actress, and he had crafted himself into a French pop star persona, and he would play like Simon and Garfunkel's Cecilia, but singing in French. And he was a great talent, and I remember that's one of the first records I really remember hearing over and over in the car, was this Hollywood Franco-American thing. When I got allowance, the first record I bought when we moved to suburban New Jersey from Europe, I remember Foreigner Double Vision had just come out, So that was a kind of a touchstone for me with Hot Blooded on it. And then the Grateful Dead's Shakedown Street had also come out right around that time. And I still can feel the cover of that album cover, that strange car with all the people on Shakedown Street there. So those are two albums. Those are two of my early album purchases. I spent my allowance on. So
was there a local record store that you would go in and just kind of?
Yeah, Gray Mat in Morristown, New Jersey, and Scotty's Records in Madison. Gray Mat was more the legit one, which had the regular releases, and then Gray Mat was where you went to get the off-label stuff or whatever,
imports, that type of thing.
Yes, exactly. What a great joy that was, right? It was
absolutely.
Combing those record stores, you found so much. You learned so much about all different kinds of music doing that. Even though you had to take such a risk, you never really knew what you bought. You got to see a lot. I'm not sure you got to hear a lot.
Well, tell me this: were you somebody who would read the liner notes religiously and then find new music based on people that were involved in the records that you really liked?
I mean, I'm certainly deeply involved in them. Were they my journey? I don't know. I always felt like with records, it's interesting because the internet opens you to everything now. With records, you had limited amounts of money and time, so you kind of were all in on whatever album you happened to get. You hope you had a good one. Like I remember getting my first Lou Reed album, and I was like, no, this is a good one. I can think of some other ones that were, I got a Molly Hatchet record, say, that was probably more forgettable, but I liked the cover art at the time. But you can only afford one record a week, maybe.
Right.
So you would delve into everything. Who knew? But whether it continued your path or set you down another pathway, I'm not sure.
Exactly. Well, you mentioned about you basically were able to get one album in a week or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Records were actually pretty expensive.
Yeah,
back then,
$7-8, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's like $7.98, $8.98. Yeah, was standard pricing.
Yes, I can't remember if it was one a week or one every couple of weeks. I can't really remember. I remember building up in 7th and 8th grade, kind of building up a record. 6th, 7th, 8th grade is when I started building up a record collection. So I had probably about 50 of them by the time I got through it. So
now, do you still have those, Fritz?
Excuse me?
Do you still have those albums?
I do. I have a whole bunch of them still. I don't spin them as much. I'm not a vinyl guy. I'd like to get back into that. I haven't quite gotten the bandwidth, but I still pull them out for lots of inspo all the time.
Yeah. And tell me this, out of your collection, what's your crown jewel to you?
Gosh, my crown jewel to me. Ooh, man.
Or even, you can make it a couple of them, because I mean, it's hard. And for me,
that's always a hard one.
It depends on what mood I'm in, or what kind of like musical phase I'm going through at the time. Is kind of what dictates my.
One that just jumped into my hand is I love Eric Clapton's Slow Hand, because I love that song, The Core on it with Marcy Levy. I love that. And that, I thought that was a really great album, and I loved how he brought her in, and it had that. And I think that whole song dominated the second side. It's kind of it had Laid Out Sally, Wonderful Tonight on it. And I thought it was so cool that he was singing with her. And then, of course, I bought it. I was a rebellious kid. Cocaine was the signature song, I think, at the beginning.
Right.
With J.J. Cale. But that taught me a lot about the English guys work with the American guys. Where are all these sounds coming from? Clapton's kind of an amorphous figure, fits into rock and roll in a lot more places than you know, I think.
Well, I mean, Lay Down Sally charted on the country charts.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, right.
And so did Promises.
Yeah, that's right. So he really is a big sweep of an artist, that guy.
Well, and I think that's as much due to the fact that Tulsa Time as well, the Don Williams song. Yeah, but country blues are basically the same thing. It's just a matter of how what approach do you take to it, but that's lyrically, thematically, it's the same. So to me, that's a natural two things for him to swing between.
Yeah, you're right, and you're right. And the two very connected American musical traditions when you think about it.
Right.
And it's funny, and that are both been appropriated in different ways by the English bluesmen too. Because you think of the Stones, also they do the same thing. It's funny. I met Eric Clapton once, and
Oh wow.
yeah, we were. I had a job as a real estate broker in New York, and he was looking at a restaurant with his partner. And I remember we were showing him the space in this building, and I remember Clapton saying, "Oh well, if you had my job, you put a recording studio up here." I was kind of thinking to myself, "What job is that?" Well, rock star. It's a good job.
Yeah, nice work if you could get it.
Yeah, nice work if you get it. He was a cool guy, though. He was nice. I mean, he was so mellow, and he's a great influence too. I mean, really, he feels it deep, Clapton.
Yeah. Well, tell me this. Getting back to your collection.
Yes.
What would be something in among those LPs that people would probably be surprised or find like to be the most left field outlier?
Left field outlier in there. Well, I've got some interesting. Like I remember I've got Thomas Dolby's "She Blinded Me with Science" in there, and Duran Duran Rio, and which I was absolutely enamored with the '80s new wave and the German new wave for that matter. This electronic music in the '80s, which I thought was like just really brilliant. I mean, we're talking a lot about classical rock, but there was so much exciting sounds coming. Like that whole synth rock that post punk that also came up in the '80s that was a really exciting mix. I mean, it reminded me of even a Tom Petty who was kind of doing like a punk thing, and these weren't just no one was sitting around trying to figure out, oh, we got the sound, we're done here. Like everyone was still trying to do something new. And so I guess,
right.
Yeah, Thomas Dolby's "She Blinded Me with Science." That's talking back to Kraftwerk and Brian Eno and some of those things. And I really relate to that. I think those are textures that are essential to music and really exciting. Like if you don't have to have a string, you can do it on a knob. It's no problem.
Mm-hmm.
No problemo,
yeah.
Right?
Well, it was fresh.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the same thing that you'd heard before. It was a case you hear it's like it's still melodic.
That's right.
Yeah. It's got pop sensibilities to it, but it's different.
Yeah.
Right. until it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. And it spoke to that, and it spoke to something modern that was going on. Like there was a modernization that was good, and that you had these things, the computers were starting to come in. I remember the first Apple 1984 ad. I mean, there had to be some sort of feeling that I mean, you could go all the way back to the Ziggy Stardust with that that the world was, the computer was coming. It was foretold, and music,
right.
Music being a vehicle for myth, the arrival of the computer was heralded, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
Some of those bands probably were the early avatars of that.
Exactly. And then, it always intrigues me how, just like life, music is cyclical.
Yes.
And how, every, reaction, the punk, was the opposite of disco. So you go from, the glam of disco, and that segues into the punk thing, and which segues into the new wave, which then segues kind of into, the hair metal, and then grunge, and then it's always, seems to go in opposite directions. Yeah, well,
each form kind of twists and turns. It's more like, I think of lots of little rivulets coming together. They meet, they part, and I think as an artist, you're trying to grab little bits from each to see what sticks to you as you find your voice in it. I think that's the journey, the creative journey for me really is about tapping into, what do I think that I would like to hear, or that I could say with that. And there's lots of points of connection there. I mean,
right. Well, to me, you can listen to any genre and hear the influences on it.
Yeah.
It may be, okay, we're going to take Like, I mean, Leonard Skinner took traditional country
Yeah.
and, blues and added 60s rock to it to
Yep.
come up with their own kind of thing. But
That's
yet
right.
you can trace, the lineage of it.
That's right. And that's where Petty, who didn't want to be Leonard Skinner, then added kind of like a New York proto-punk thing so that he was going to be a different guy from Gainesville, Florida.
Exactly.
Which was really interesting at the time. At the time, the Southern rock was dominating the airwaves. And I guess then there was the Outlaw. Then other people just kept doing it.
Right. Exactly.
But
Now,
you have to have. Well, it gets to the it's always finding your path is takes some doing.
Exactly. Now, what's interesting is you mentioned Lou Reed earlier.
Yes.
I'm always, taking new music and playing it for folks.
Yeah.
And, it's like with the, when we scheduled, for your appearance here on this show, I played your song, had people go to YouTube and listen to them. And it was intriguing to see how diverse people's takes on, your songs are.
I'm curious to hear that.
Now, one of the first things that that I heard was the comment was, if Lou Reed fronted a band that was half late 80s alt country, half 70s pop, that would be it would be the Fritz's record.
That sounds I'd take that.
Yeah. So now King of Corona.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us the backstory on that song.
Well, King Corona, so King Corona was really born out of my experience in this apartment during the pandemic. I mean, I was my life turned on a dime during the pandemic. I'm from New York City. March 2020 rolls around, and we were just about getting ready for the kids' spring break, that kind of thing to happen, and suddenly things started to lock down. All of a sudden, it was like, you can't see this person, you can't see this, masks, gloves, people were in the hospital. Then it all happened so fast. The next thing I knew someone in the hospital on a ventilator. I knew someone who died. It was shocking. And then I was quarantined from my children. I couldn't see my kids, and I was in this apartment. And suddenly, that was kind of all happening to me at once. And then I woke up on April 6th and had a 102-degree fever, and my heart was going 120 beats a minute. And luckily, my doctor was still in town, because I went down and he said, I'm going to give you a flu test. You're probably going to be negative. I got a feeling you got corona. And I was like, I got a feeling I got corona too. And sure enough, I tested positive for corona. So then I had a pretty intense bout of corona for 2.5 weeks here in my apartment in New York. And it was that experience. That song was really about this defragmentation, really, of my life, where I didn't see anyone for about 6 weeks. I think no one really, no physical contact except for my doctor. Food got left outside the door. I spent the first week trying to break the fever. I slept like crazy. And did a lot of deep breathing. And luckily for me, it didn't go sideways. But it was pretty harrowing. And like I said, it came on so fast. And we were in New York really shocked by that. And I'm very lucky that after 8 days, the fever broke. It took another couple weeks for the rest of it to, there was still a lot of lingering stuff with it. But I'm extremely, extremely grateful that my journey was what it was, when so many others did not. But that's the basis for that song. And the only real rituals that I could have as I was getting better even right before it's like wait until dark, sweating this out, walking alone in the park. All of a sudden, that early pandemic of just being alone and walking. Although there was something also calming and musical about it, because there was nothing else to do. And that's, the pandemic is a tragedy, but what did we learn from our time there? It's been very interesting to me.
Absolutely. Now, I think you'll probably find this to be an interesting take on that song. One of the people that I played it for Their note that they sent me was, if the Psychedelic Furs made an alt country record, it would be King of Corona.
Oh, I love that. If the Psychedelic Furs made an alt country record, it would be King of Corona. I love the Psychedelic Furs. I was a fanatic of theirs in high school. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, well, good. Well, I'll let them know that.
Oh man, to be compared to the Psychedelic Furs, right on. That's super cool.
Oh, they've got a lot of tracks that are on my playlist of stuff of their era. So,
yeah, they're really good. I mean, The Ghost in You. That's another great song too. I love that song. Oh, yeah, they were.
I always liked Here Come Cowboys because it was so anthemic.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I like their music. I like the grandeur of it. There's something cinematic. I look for that in my songs too. So,
exactly. Yeah. Kind of like Echo and the Bunnymen. Same type. Yes,
right.
Different musically, but they had that thematic, atmospheric, movie soundtrack type thing.
That's what I go for that. It's definitely in my, like, I think of Darker Now as a very cinematic song. That to me felt like a movie soundtrack. And I think a lot of that was certainly an influence of mine. I think of the Psychedelic Furs specifically as that, but yeah, it's interesting to me.
Yeah. Now Stardust.
Yep.
The person that was the first to comment on that goes back to the Lou Reed thing, saying, Lou Reed goes 90s, country slash alternative on it. Stardust, tell us about that one.
Stardust is really about my life in Southern California, trying to chase the California dream, all while pining for my New York roots. And I think I found that image of Ulysses lashed to the mast and the siren's voices calling, because there was something so much of the adventures, these stops along the way. That's the way life in Southern California is. You stop in at these weird places. It's all spread out in this landscape of challenges. You're trying to make it in the movie business, and you're trying to. My children were both born in Los Angeles. Trying to make it, that you have to slay the dragon or something like that. There is something of an odyssey about it in the dusty Southland. So that was that's where I pulled the Ulysses thing from, and it seemed to stick. So I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Darker Now.
Darker Now. Yep.
Tell me what your motivation with the song was, and then I'll tell you what one of the viewers said what their take was.
Well, Darker Now gets back to where you were saying the Psychedelic Furs, and I actually was thinking about structuring it like a traditional English ballad in a way. I had the motif kind of repeats itself there, and it's a slightly different structure, and I wanted to have like that kind of cinematic, like a detective story, and I wanted it to be a really intimate human vignette too. Like I maybe it's like the Furs or some of those English bands tell. Or one of the things that really draws me to Lou Reed is the ability to connect these like deeply human, personal stories to music, like with all the little details there, and then elevate it with a little bit of grandeur. And that to me was, give it some kind of showbiz polish, and that's kind of where I was going with Darker Now, I think, to give it that sound.
Yeah, well,
I'd be curious to hear what your take is.
Well, you know what? The viewer who was the first to comment on it said that it sounds like Fritz wrote a lost, marked out for Dire Straits song.
I've heard it compared to Mark. Yes, I've heard the Dire Straits a bunch of times before. Sometimes I think that's because Mark Knopfler writes a lot in A flat and in that key. There's a lot that change. There's a change I like in there. That's a lot that I know pops up a lot of his stuff. And we have kind of a similar maybe delivery style. I take that only as a compliment, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing that runs through all the singles that have been put out is the guitar playing.
Oh, right.
Who's playing guitar in these ones? Who also produced, correct?
Yeah, he's also the producer. He's a fantastic guitar. I play the bass. Tosh is a fantastic guitar player, and his solos on those songs, and he's also an amazing producer. I'm super fortunate to have met him. I mean, our musical vibe is really strong, and I wouldn't be sitting here without doing this interview without him. It's funny, on Stardust, we were thinking about the vocals. I said, I'm thinking of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards when they're singing back at the mic on those choruses. I said, that's what I want that feeling to be on the Stardust choruses, and he totally got that. It didn't have to say much to explain. I said, when they're like up there, rah, rah, rah. And he got it, because we were making these songs in lockdown in the studio. We really only could see each other not that often. It wasn't like I worked these songs out live with a band before recording them. So we were doing them kind of piecemeal. So I'd have to tell him. So we haven't done the thing of being up at the mic together for that. And I'm looking forward to doing that when this all ends, because I think it'll be really fun. I think it's going to improve the songs too.
Well, there's something, about live performance and the chemistry with your bandmates.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just can't replace that human interaction.
Not at all. Not at all. And that's what I'm really looking forward to, taking these and working them out. I mean, I've worked them out with friends or with Tosh on guitars and stuff, but we haven't gotten to play them with an audience or anything like that. And that's probably the most exciting thing for me coming out of this pandemic. It's like, wow, okay, I've got like a EP's worth of material. I'm going to time to go get on the road, or make something happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, the new single, Look Out, Botticelli Girl.
Yep.
Tell us about that song.
About that song. So that song, one afternoon, I went over during the pandemic, I went over to the Metropolitan Museum right after it reopened. And I've always been drawn to, I love standing in front of those paintings, and you stand kind of in awe of the flow of history, looking at that stuff. And I find it very calming. To go to the museum, transports me creatively, but also like calms. I find the museum a very calming experience. And I remember coming out, and I was thinking about Botticelli, and I was thinking about standing in front of that painting, and the song just started to come to me there. I was, I was in a place where I was like, I thought that was a theme that was worth exploring. And I thought, Botticelli Girl, I was like, God, that's a catchy lyric. I'm going to build something around that. So that was where that song started. And from there, I kind of worked on thinking about how something timeless stays in our lives, and how how so much else changes in our lives. And that's really what the song is about. It's about the tension between what's timeless and what's not, and our desire to hold on to both.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll find this viewer take on Lookout interesting, because they said if Jimmy Dale Gilmore has a cousin in New York City, it would be Fritz Michel.
Jimmy Dale Gilmore. Now, who's Jimmy Dale Gilmore, though?
He's a country singer, country folks guy. He's part of the Flatlanders.
Okay. Okay.
Give it a listen.
Then I'll take it as a good. Okay, cool.
Well, Jimmy Dale's one of my favorites. So it's a super nice guy.
All right.
too.
Well, that's that.
So that's
Cool.
It's one of those things to where it's not. It's a comment that I can understand it. I didn't expect it though. That was a really unique take, I thought. So. But
yeah, I'm curious about that, because clearly, like, the Americana thing does run deep in me. I mean, so I get it. And I think to a lot of New Yorkers, and I don't know if it's the New Yorkers. I'd be curious to hear what your thing is on that, because you watch the Stones when they go down and do their Southern blues and country, and are New Yorkers viewed the same way when they appropriate, or if they're doing the country thing or doing the blues thing? Like, how does that sit with
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Fritz, the thing that always intrigued me is how different areas have distinct sounds. Different areas read, different, attitudes and personalities, both in people and the music. Yeah. And even if it's the same style, Chicago blues is different than Texas blues.
Absolutely.
Which is different from Kansas City or Nolans or, what have you.
Yeah.
The rock scene in LA is definitely different than the scene in New York.
Yep.
So it always intrigued me when, like you mentioned, the Stones going down to Memphis, to Muscle Shoals, to record.
Yeah.
Or ZZ Top going to Memphis. You pick up different things along the way. You can hear, you know where these artists are from, but you can hear them relishing the influences. You don't
The
go
influences,
Memphis to record if you're not a fan of the Memphis sound.
That's right.
Whether it's blues, if it's sax, or with the soul stuff, what have you. But I think it has to be part of the DNA of that artist's music. It may not be a big part, but if you go and you try to do it and it's not part of your thing, then it's not going to sound true.
That's right. Although I think as a songwriter, you're always looking for any kind of stuff that will work. Like it's kind of like a paintbrush. It's like, is this jazz chord going to work here? Is this little progression? Is this turnaround going to be there? So it may be like a real 6-5-2-1 turnaround, but you put a bunch of very straight jazz, but you give it a rock feel. So you never really quite know where you're grabbing from.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. But you still have to,
as you search.
You have to be enough of an aficionado of that style of music to incorporate it. It may not be,
yes, and to find your own voice in it, and to find your voice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you do it and it's not your voice, say it doesn't ring true. But if it's you, but you're showing that influence on it, and if you do it right, that shows that that music. So that would say then that's when it rings true.
Right. And I think you should. Yep. And I think you're looking, as an artist, you're looking for kind of that amalgam, because we all bring a lot of experiences to life, or at least I'm lived quite a bit now that I'm a little bit older. I have a wealth of experience that is going to inform music, that's going to inform the way I sit down and play chords, and there are so many stories there, and I think that's really the magic of music, is that we all need this thing in our life to help us explore, myth and bliss in a way, and to have that conversation with an audience. It's really remarkable that way, and getting to participate in that is you need the audience there too. So you got to make something that people are going to want to listen to.
Right. Well,
hence the influences.
But everybody pretty much wants the same thing in life, and if you can write stuff that is relatable, people will understand it. The audience might have a little bit different background, but if those core things are relatable to them, now they will listen.
That's right.
So,
but and I think we all really are looking to have that conversation with each other in a way. I mean, that's what makes it's not so much about us being there and the listeners there. It's really, it's a pretty intimate exchange. And that's what I kind of learned from doing plays and from doing all of these things, or, we're playing gigs. I mean, it's really, the energy goes both ways. It's just,
exactly.
We're sharing it together.
Right. And if the artist can build a bond with that audience, whether it be lyrically, whether it be musically, whether it be with the emotion of the performance, once you make that connection, then that's when you've got that, wonderful chemistry, and the audience is very loyal in those situations. So, but I'll tell you what, Fritz,
for sure, because those moments, that's what you don't get that all the time. Yeah,
exactly. So, but tell me this, Fritz, is there any aspect of your music that we didn't get to cover?
No, gosh, I think you've covered it pretty well. I mean, but I'm working on videos for all my songs at the moment, so that's taking me back into my filmmaking. So that's been interesting. I'm reconnecting with my directing colleagues now to find the visual in this, and that's interesting. And then a theater colleague of mine, we did plays about architecture years ago. I said to him, "Why? How about we do a musical about architects and see if that happens?" So. Yeah, this has been, I'm hoping that this is that I've lost, that I've found something good in this pandemic, because it's been a tough year for so many people and so much loss, and particularly for artists. And I think, look, we're all looking to connect again. And so I'm grateful to talk to you. Grateful to be out talking about my music too.
Yeah. Now, just to digress for a moment, are you an architecture buff?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
Why do you ask?
Who are some of the architects, the styles that you are most fond of?
Well, I love the work. Moshe Safdie is a tremendous architect. He's one of I would call him the Frank Gehry of Tel Aviv, but he's built everything from the Vancouver Public Library to what are some other things? To the Marina Bay Sands Hotel in Singapore. I mean, and his first project as a young man was Habitat, which was a housing project in Montreal. It's been around Moshe's probably into his 80s or 90s now. And, but he's an architect who's always in touch with the surroundings. I think architects, there's always a tension. Are you an artist or are you an engineer? Should you build the building? What comes first, the building or the purpose? And architecture is a field that's rife with problems. You can end up with a bridge to nowhere or something that doesn't work. And so we explored that a lot in our work. But, the best architects are creating, and designers are creating, improving, creating human spaces that we can live in, beautiful theaters and sounds. It's a dark art, probably not unlike building a great theater. You need an architect to build a theater.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I'm an architecture buff. For sure.
Well, very cool.
Yeah. Are you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you like architecture?
I do.
Yeah.
And actually, just minutes from our studio here is a Frank Lloyd Wright house. So it is.
Is that right?
Kind of in the.
Yeah, they're great to see. They're great to see, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, the Bradley House is one closest, but we're not far from Oak Park, Illinois. That's got all this stuff. A lot of his homes, a lot of prairie style stuff. So it's
the whole everything, that whole area is full of it. It's full of it, right? I mean,
mm-hmm.
I saw you saw a movie a few years ago called called Columbus. It's about Columbus, Ohio, it's about a young Chinese guy comes back to see his father, who's a well-known architect, but he's dying in Columbus. And Columbus, Ohio, apparently has examples of Frank Lloyd, all the great architects of the mid-century, all concentrated in this town in Ohio. It's just a beautiful movie by a Korean director named Kanan Doga, I think is his name. I'd urge you to see it. It's excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's got mid-century modern. That's my go-to.
And it's got a lot of. You would love this movie.
I'll have to check that out.
Columbus. Yeah, check it out. It's because what won the if you liked Minari this year or Parasite, which won Best Picture last year,
mm-hmm.
Columbus I thought was like the best. There's kind of these Korean American movies that came out, and this one was just remarkable and really got the set that sense of place that a well executed building serves in its community. And that's the beautiful thing about architecture. I like architecture.
Well, only appropriate. We should wrap this show up. Wrap up music night, talking about architecture. So,
well, I think they're all connected in a lot of ways. I mean, like I said, you need to have a concert hall to make a concert, to make the music go, and everyone. So, I think all the arts combined, and you need to have an audience just as much to have a show as you need the musicians.
Exactly. So, the musicians need a place to be, and without the musicians, the theaters are kind of just empty.
That's right. So was encouraged to see Bruce Springsteen coming back to bring Broadway back to life this week.
Yes.
I read that in the Times this
Saw
morning.
that.
It's exciting.
Yeah. So little by
Yeah.
little.
Good stuff.
So, but
Little by
all right,
little.
everyone. We'll
Little by little.
tell you what, we've had Fritz social media scrolling across the bottom of the screen throughout the show. The new single, Look Out, by a Jelly Girl, go to You Can See, as well as all Fritz's other videos at his YouTube channel. So I suggest you head there and take a look. Fritz, I want to thank you for spending your time with us here on Music Night.
Thanks so much. It was a hoot chatting with you.
Well, thank you very much. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Everybody, have a good night.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.